Hey everybody, welcome to Xavia Fox Talks.
That was going back to the compatibility piece. You have to have both chemistry and compatibility in the room.
And want it at the same time.
Exactly.
I think that's another thing, because there have been some times where somebody is the right person, but they're doing a degree program, or they getting ready to do all these other, and they can't be present with you because life doesn't allow them to do that. And so wanting the same things, wanting it at the same time, I mean, everything just has to align, and sometimes, more times than not, they don't align, and that is just the reality of it. And again, you don't have any control over that. But to be emotionally, you all are willing to talk about the way you feel. Men think it. You ask us, like, how do you feel about me? And the man's going to tell you, this is what I think about you. Because we are very distant. Our emotions are very secondary, but they're real.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to do is to kind of exercise in the book is that, you know, men feel exactly the way you all feel about the relationship. Hopes, dreams, ambitions, all those different kind of things. And when it doesn't work out, we feel the loss. We may not talk to you all about it.
Okay.
But we do feel the loss, and I wanted to demonstrate that we can put words toward that. That, you know, at some point, whether it works out the way we wanted to work out, you were loved, you were cherished. So I told my ex-wife, because we sat down and talked before the book came out. I was like, you know what, there's so many things I couldn't talk to you about. I didn't have the tools, the ability to talk to you about. But I just want you to read it, not to disagree with it, but to hear my voice, to understand at that moment you were loved, you were cherished. I had every hope that we would live happily forever after. It didn't work out, but I can still honor that about us. I can still thank God for the moments that we did share.
Absolutely.
And understand that you're a better person for it. I'm a better person. She made me grow up when she came into my life, and she made me grow up when she left my life. And I can be very grateful for that. Not saying that I didn't go through days where, you know, I'm not saying that, because the real truth is that I have very intense emotions about that. But to reconcile and do the work to reconcile all of that, you begin to understand there's great peace with forgiveness. There's great peace with understanding that where I am, God has me, and it's not by surprise. And I have the capacity to be loved again and to love somebody again, which is what we all want.
Well, did you, how long was this process? How long was from the moment when you knew a divorce was imminent until you were at peace with who you are as a single person? How long was that whole process?
Well, it's still a process.
It's still a process.
It's still a process. I don't think you ever, because we are human, I don't think you ever get to a point where that process of growth, maturity, transformation is totally over. I am much better now because I've been intentional about putting tools in my life and understanding me and all the different kind of things. But from the moment the divorce happened, I was, first of all, in denial. You know, you're in denial about what life is for you and where you are. And so, but denial is part of the process too. And then you move to being angry, and then you move to acceptance and all those different kind of things. And that is a faith journey. It's a faith-filled journey. That every day you wake up, you're understanding that I'm human, and I am in the process. I am in the throes of what I mentioned in the book, co-creating with God. That my life is being recreated every single day to be who God intended me to be. Whether or not I am loved by somebody the way I want to be loved or not, that I have all the requisite tools right now to do that. And I have to remind, why I say I'm still in process, because I have to remind myself of that today, even when I have days where I don't feel like I have what I deserve or what I want, and things don't happen the way I want them to happen. You have to remind yourself every day that you are still being transformed, that you're still in love with God and love yourself, and you're still in faith. And the more you allow God to move you, transfer you, shape you, the more in line you come up with the universe, and you begin to attract those things in the life that you really wanted to begin with.
So you said earlier that men don't solve the problem the same place they created it. So
well, I did not say that. We create problems. No, that's how you heard that. That's a woman interpretation. I did not say that.
Okay.
So that's how you may have heard it. Let me say what I said.
Right. Say what you said.
That men, that's funny. She's very talented. But that men do not heal themselves in the same place they hurt themselves.
Oh.
Now that is very different from what you just said.
Interpretation.
Yeah, the language is important. Words are very, very important. No, I did not say that.
He's like, no, that wasn't me. Patrick. Okay, fine.
Wait, I had a question behind that.
No, I'm just saying, and answer because I think that's a two-part question then, because that's significant. Even the way she asked.
The way you heard what I said is very telling. I mean, it's just very, how you interpret language. So here,
yeah, that's what I heard.
Well, I had a question behind
right here, I'm gonna give it to you. But one of the things that I wanted to write, because most relationship books about recovery, healing is written by women. I wanted to write in a very masculine voice, and I wanted you all to understand how we talk.
Great.
Like I said that, and you heard it very differently, but you're filtering it through your feminine ears, which is okay. But on the other side of that, the problem where men aren't emotionally present is because you all don't listen. We feel like y'all don't listen to us. I'm telling you the truth. Whether that's a reality, whether it's a reality or not, we filter things very differently. So why am I going to talk when it's all about the way you feel anyway, and it's all the way about how you hear me anyway? So why talk anyway? I wanted to publicly demonstrate that there are emotional ways in which men put words around their feelings. Even if it may sound very differently from the way you hear it. Our speech is not your speech. Our language is not your language. We have different love languages. But there are ways men can feel, but you have to be able to understand how we talk.
I think that's huge.
That was huge, because now that you repeated, that is what you said. I guess that, I don't know, mean what I heard.
Right.
But my question was, did you then seek closure? Did you at any point go back to her and say, what exactly was it that I did or that you feel contributed to the demise of this relationship?
What did I? No, I didn't. No, I never went back and said, what did I do? No, that's not the first question. I think that from my perspective, I looked at it very broadly and put it in context that we were so young, wanting very sincere about our Christian faith, very sincere about marriage, but being sincere doesn't mean that you're going to be successful all of the time. And it doesn't mean that you have the necessary skills, is what I tell people in church, is that relationships are for grown people. They're not for play. They're not to be handled frivolously because you're dealing with another person's life. And so we were able to talk and reconcile the fact that it wasn't what somebody did, although there's those little things that I talk about, what she said, how I didn't say, that happens in relationships. But underneath all of that is two very underdeveloped people who hadn't really experienced the gamut of life and all it has to bring to know self enough to know what we bring. Because here it is, you are who you are, you get married, marriage changes you into a whole nother identity. And if you haven't done the work to know who you are, and you allow marriage to redefine you, you become all confused. You talking about stuff, spring cleaning and stuff getting on the floor and it's messy. It all comes out in marriage. So if you haven't done the work to compartmentalize and integrate yourself to say, you know what, that's me. That's not you, that's me. Or that's you, that's not what I'm doing. If you can't have the tools to kind of recognize things about yourself, it's all messy and it ends in very unsuccessful and harmful ways. And so the reconciliation was to understand where we were at that moment in our lives, very sincere, very much in love, very much wanted to have the life that we both wanted, and yet we did not have what it took to make it. That's nobody's fault. We were both adults, adults, as it were, and couldn't pull it off. And you live with some regret that if I could have said.
That's human.
But that's part of being human. But that kind of regret, those kind of questions are not debilitating when you can't move on and respect each other, love each other. She's getting married, which I'm very happy about. She's found the love that she
wants
needs.
to win?
No.
Okay.
But I've been divorced about 8 years now. Yeah, 8 or 9 years now. Yeah.
And I asked that question about, because I know that some people that have those friendships after divorce and stuff like that, they'll invite their ex-husband or ex-wife or something. So, in all honesty, I was really asking.
I think the idea of her being able to move on in her life and me not being a looming figure, I want her to be happy. That was why I married her.
I hear that.
And even if happy doesn't come between you and I still want that for you. And so I want her to go and be blessed and have a life.
That is. I hear that because I know some people, of course, they got married when they were younger. Some of my high school friends, and now they're unfortunately divorced, and they're still significant. Huge figures in each other's lives, and I'm like, how does that work if you guys are in other relationships. You know, I asked that question, you know, out of a place of never having been married. And I'm like, well, how does it work? Because I don't know if as a woman I was, you know, married to someone whose ex-wife was still present. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Well, if there's kids, then...
Well, if there's kids,
it's complicated.
But yeah, it is.
It's terribly complicated. And I think it takes two people being intentional and really talking about it and working through it in order to make those kind of things very successful. So it doesn't hinder your new relationships. But I'm not of the opinion that just because you weren't happy with me, I don't want you to be happy with nobody else. I want you to be happy.
Right.
I want you to have everything that you want to have. And I think it's not always like, I think that could be a man. I can't see the man thing.
No, go ahead and say it. Go ahead and say it.
There are some dudes who just reach still. You know, she tries to move on and he's still reaching and very harmful and violent
because
ways.
there's men who are stalkers.
Yeah, you're right. And I've seen that up close. And so you're right. And so I think, So no, I'm just.
I'm gonna look directly into the camera.
No.
Okay. All right.
But I think it just takes maturity. It just takes maturity just to let it go. You know, and say, you know what, it didn't happen the way we wanted to happen. I have no control over it. And so, you know what, I want you to be happy. Find somebody, you know, and be happy with. And I think that's being Christian. I think that's just being a mature person.
And that's being humble. I mean, that's being humble. I mean, in the sense of all these other emotions, whatever you could have, you were in a place where you were okay, period. And you were able to say, hey, you know what, this was a teachable situation, it was a humbling situation, but more importantly, I want your happiness because I want to be happy too, and I can't harbor this or carry this with me and then still be looking at you and, you know, all those other things that could come about. And I guess I'm going to ask this question because you mentioned it at least twice now, and I'm so grateful that you did. The therapy, the mental health piece. We know in the African American community that mental health is frowned upon for the most part. I mean, there's some of us that, you know, gladly will go gravitate to do what we got to do. But then there's some of us, you know, that are still, even as progressive as we are, that still feel like, you know, acknowledging that there may be something that's slightly off kilter today, you know, or what have you. We don't want to deal with that. But as a man, I'm sure that there's also that heightened elevation of, you know, going to see a therapist or a counselor or, God forbid, psychologist or a psychiatrist, you know, whatever, you know, poison that you choose. And you talk about that in your book. I mean, was it something that you fought initially? Was it something that you just readily accepted?
Yeah, I readily accepted it because I have friends who are psychologists and counselors or whatever. So through that, you know, you kind of get, you know, these poor man sessions of coming together, kind of talking through some stuff. But when it was really, I had a friend and we had a practice of sitting down once a week. And finally, over the course of some time, he says, you know what, you're not getting any better. And you really need to sit down with somebody and have somebody pay some attention to some stuff. I was number one, I trusted my friend's voice. And I knew me at that point, you're right, I'm not getting any better about this. And so I didn't have any hesitation, even though I didn't have a point of reference either in my family or in my religion that says that this should be a component of your life, your mental health. And it was very difficult when I got into therapy because it's the one place you can be honest, but when you don't know how to be honest, you're spending money wasting time. And that was for the first part. Yeah, for the first part, I'm retelling stories, but I'm lying. You know, I'm covering people who hurt me, and I'm retelling them in ways where it's my fault or all these different kind of things. And finally, I talk about it. She said, if you're not going to be honest, don't come back.
Sure.
You know, you're wasting your time. You're wasting my time. And so it was like, then it made me kind of recount some stuff. And it was painful because I realized how maybe victimized I was, and I didn't know it. I didn't know to recognize signs of abuse in my life that had happened, whether it was in my relationships or by my religion, my church, all these different kind of things. And when you start unearthing all of these things, it really became oxygen for my soul. You know, I had been suffocating emotionally all of these years, holding stuff in. And so by the time I got to it and started talking about it, it was such a gush of release that sometimes there was some laughter, and sometimes I walked away very angry, and sometimes I walked away need to go to Miss Fields and get some cookies. I needed something. Like, yeah, I did. I mean, I went through all of those different kind of things, but it was absolutely the best choice I had ever made in my life, besides knowing who Jesus was. Choosing to go to therapy and sit down, I would not have been able to finish the book or to handle all of the other things I'm handling. So I'm a big fan. I wear that with pride, and I can be able to recognize other people and be like, you really need to sound.
You need to go. Now you the guru.
Yeah, like you should. Please go. You need to sit down. Yeah, and so you're right. Especially for men, we are the most vulnerable to mental abuse because readily we don't acknowledge it or even talk about it. You all can acknowledge it, talk about it, find empathy with one another, and that in and of itself can be healing. Men, we never get around with each other. Talk about, what she did, how she hurt me, cry. We're not gonna do that. We're just not gonna do that. We can know, something went down because he said, "Come pick me up," and he got his bags and his stuff. Like, what happened, dog? And we get it. Like, something happened. That's the empathy. It's an unspoken empathy that we have with each other. But we're most vulnerable to carry these things because we don't talk about it. And I think that the things that we don't talk about affect us the most. And so if we don't talk about it with each other, we get in relationships and you want us to talk. It's not going to happen. Like, it's just not. Like, how do you feel about that? I think that it was, whatever. Whatever you feel. Or we'll let you have the feelings and we'll do the thinking. And that's, it worked. We learn how to work on that, but it's not as whole and as fulfilling as it should be. And relationships aren't as emotionally fulfilling for men as they are for women because we're not present emotionally.
Okay, so you've already disconnected way before you
got
into the relationship.
Absolutely.
Sometimes. I mean,
you could get married to a woman and be very disconnected to her emotionally.
I never shared that with someone. I know somebody that they're married now 15 years, and I'm like, whoa, time.
Yeah.
And they love each other passionately and all of that great stuff, but there are these pieces that keep coming up in their situation, and these dynamics are unfolding, and he's like, oh, I didn't know this about. I'm like, it's been there. Yeah. Whether or not you buffered it, whether or not you chose to ignore it, or she hid it, and or whatever the case may have been, because you played your role, you situated yourself, I'm the man, I'm going to do this, and she situated herself, I'm the woman, I'm going to do this, and both of you guys had these, very well-defined roles, you left all this stuff.
Like Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah,
perfect
right.
It's a perfect movie. It's like you're leading two separate lives and hiding from each other, living in the same house.
Absolutely.
And more times than not, that plays out over and over again in our relationship, and it comes out in different situations, in different seasons of life with somebody else, and it rises to the surface, and you don't know who this person is because you haven't showed this to me, and I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know why you're upset. I don't know why when I said this triggers something in you because you haven't resolved it, you haven't talked about it, and there it is, being human. I would rather you just say this is what it is, even if we have to partner over our life to really manage it and talk through it and to love each other through it. If you don't put it on the table and acknowledge it, then it could, like cancer, quietly eat away at the surface till one day 40 years passes, and I don't know anything about the situation. Alan Tipagore, 40 years, we get a divorce. Well, whoa.
How does that happen?
It happens. It's simple how it happens. Over the course of life, you lead these separate lives emotionally, however, and all of a sudden you realize, why am I in this?
Right.
Anyway.
And by the way, guys, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Angelina Jolie, and Brad Pitt. So.
Oh, yeah, that was good because I.
For those of us who
you didn't see
the movie?
I'm not a big movie person. Maybe I should take a look at that.
He said he was a big TV person. You gotta see that. The movie's hilarious. But the point is they didn't know each other. Yeah. He's like, oh, you're Jewish? Or wait a minute, I thought you were adopted. I mean, they found out all this other stuff because they led these separate lives and both were spies. Okay, told the movie. Right. All right, but I think that's good, and I think how you broke that down and understanding how disconnections do happen in relationships is huge, because I think we meet that person, we're happy, we seem compatible, there's that chemistry, I like him, he likes me, it's not about not
wanting to pregnant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. All kind of reasons.
Right, all kind of reasons, and then it's like, whoa, wait person is all of this and I'm all of that, and we sleep in the same bed together, but you know, one of us actually has an eye open and one eye closed going, who is this person? What am I doing here again? And we do that for 10 years, 15 years, 30, 40, you know, out to the board, looking at each other probably cross-eyed by now, you know, looking at each other like, wait a minute, I don't even know who this cat is, you know, and I'm sleeping next to him or her. But I think, and my final question, and just, you know, understanding that male point of view, that masculine part, masculinity is huge, and I think to be able to place that on paper, because and we joked about this, there are a lot of men that don't like to write, you know, and it sounds like, you know, doing this book was a very therapeutic thing for you, and it was good, it was healthy, it was just getting thoughts out on paper, and ultimately, you know, ended it with the book. But what about those men that don't want to write, or the two-finger peckers is what me and Xavia laughed about. You know, they know A and B and they peck with those two fingers.
Mm-hmm.
How do they work through this process of grief, pain, loss, abandonment, rejection?
Yeah.
Right? How do they work through those emotions coming out of relationships?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I want them to do is get the book.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, I think that you have to be able to, at least on a couple of things. I am a big proponent of spirituality, because your spirituality opens you up in ways. You know, really walking with God, however you understand God in whatever context, opens you up to something that's bigger than yourself. Mm-hmm. And that connection allowed healing to be transferred in ways that you needed. Two, good friends. You know, a woman can never replace the bond that a man has with other men. And having that component in your life, whether you're sitting around watching the game or whether or not you have a men's fellowship in your church, however, sometimes when that's habitual and it's a practice in your life, over the course of time, stuff begins to start coming out.